So, what's Putin's plan with all this in Ukraine?
I think Putin's plan is nothing to do with Ukraine. It's ultimately about public opinion inside Russia, which likes very much this sort of nationalist adventure, and it distracts from the failure of the Putin economic modernization program at home, which has been disastrous. And it also is very good from a wider point of view because it weakens the West. He's highlighted the divisions within the West and also the unwillingness of Western public opinion to contemplate any painful or serious response to this, and also the power of the pro-Russian business lobby in the West.
So, what's his ultimate goal?
I think that the ultimate goal is to bust the West as a serious counterweight to Russian power in Europe. So he wants to see the American alliance with Europe, the Atlantic alliance, weakened to the point it's no longer able to defend the Baltic states or the frontline states of Eastern Europe. He also wants to see the European Union's ability to stand up to Russia on energy weakened so that he can go back to playing divide and rule games with bilateral energy contracts with particular European countries.
Will he succeed?
It's looking pretty good for him at the moment, and I think that we will probably try and stop him, but very late in the day and at a very high cost.
This will damage the Russian economy very severely. Does he have a long-term strategy for the Russian economy?
Well, I think it will damage the Russian economy a bit, but he's quite willing to take those hits, and the Russian people are willing to take those hits. And unfortunately, we are not willing to take hits when it comes to our economy. Our politicians are desperate to keep the recovery going, and the last thing they want is higher energy prices, more unemployment, and lower growth. So I think that the advantage from that point of view is on Putin's side, and I think that he reckons if he can get new rules for energy sales to Europe, that will entrench Russia as an energy exporter to Europe for decades ahead, and charging preferential prices and getting a good deal, and that will underpin his regime at home for years to come.
Is it possible that we will see a similar development in the Belarus?
I would be surprised if we saw a similar development in Belarus, because Belarus is very loyal to Russia. But I think in the Baltic states it's really quite likely. I think that the Baltic states are I fear, are the next target, because he sees that the West is weak in the Baltic states. The Baltic states are militarily quite difficult to defend, and particularly with Sweden and Finland on the sidelines, it would be really quite easy to stage a provocation in the Baltic states in a way that would be hard for NATO to respond to.
So, has the Western leaders been too naive?
The Western leaders have been systematically naive for more than 20 years. These problems didn't start with Putin, they predate them. The Baltic states have been warning us about Russia since 1991, and we've not been listening to their warnings. Now they're right, and it's very late in the day for us to be taking their advice.
So what will happen next?
I think we're going to see Ukraine developing as a failed state. I think that Putin has already won the battle to stop Ukraine solving its political and constitutional crisis, or to get its economy back on track, so he can continue destabilising Ukraine and leave us to try and deal with the consequences. And I think he'll also turn his attention elsewhere, possibly to Georgia, possibly to Moldova, or possibly to the Baltic states, where he can deliver a really humiliating blow to Western unity by doing something there which is really bad for the Baltic states and which we are unable to stop.
So what would Sweden do?
Sweden should immediately stop its catastrophically irresponsible policy of staying out of northeastern European security. We can't defend the Baltic states without Sweden, and by your attitude you're making a war more likely rather than less likely.
If we have a similar conference next year, what will we be discussing then?
Well, I hope we will be able to have a similar conference next year. We may be discussing the fact that we've lost the Baltic states.
Thank you very much.